Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are dialing in from today. My name is Véronique Turinas-Postel, and I'm the Group Head of Sales and Distribution at Euler Hermes. I would like to thank you all for joining us for this global webinar on the COVID-19 crisis. Most of us, especially now in Europe, but also in the US and everywhere in the world, don't need to look very far to witness firsthand the escalation of the situation as many countries step up their measures to contain this outbreak and limit the impact on both public health and the economy. At Euler Hermes, we have followed developments very closely since the beginning of the crisis, and we monitor the situation on an ongoing basis. Accordingly, we are taking proportionate measures to protect our mutual customers from the financial impacts on their businesses. Given the rapidly evolving situation, however, we wanted to take this opportunity and give you an overview on the extent and implication of the level of risk we see at the moment. To do so, please allow me to introduce Alexis Garati, our Chief Economist at Euler Hermes, and Loès Limon-du-Parc-Meur, the Group Head of Risk Underwriting at Euler Hermes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexis Garati. I am the head of macro research in Euler Hermes. Today, I will present you the scenario, the macroeconomic scenario, in a presentation that we call COVID-19 Contained Economics. So we will present in this the most important element being relevant to understand the very critical situation that we are experiencing. Above all, in the slide number 2, what is important to say is that we have started the year of 2020 in a situation of extreme fragility. Let's talk only, for example, of political fragmentation being visible everywhere in the world, which is very detrimental to the coordination which is needed to tackle the very serious crisis that we have. There are also in the fragility that we had highlighted previously, the situation of overvaluation of markets. And so we know that when we are in a context of overvaluation for equity or for fixed income markets, any episode of stress has even more devastating impact on the economy via a significant tightening of monetary and financial condition. Of course, in this wall of fragility, we can see that central banks in 2019 had operated an efficient policy of stabilization, but today, despite huge injection of liquidity, their policy seems to be powerless. So we will see first number 3 that the contagion is still at work. We have passed a very critical step recently, meaning that there are now more cases observed externally compared with cases observed inside China. And we have calculated and we have observed that actually Italy, France, Germany, and the US are trailing the Hubei province by nearly 2 months. It means that we can expect the current crisis to last at least until June of this year. On the slide 4, we present the first step that we have observed in this crisis. We will see that there are 2 transformations in the nature of that crisis. The first nature of the crisis with the epidemic taking place in China is a shock on global trade. And of course, with so many difficulties being observed at the beginning of the crisis in China, it meant at this time a huge shock on global trade. Taking into account the last element that we have at our disposal, we expect now a contraction by minus 3.7% of global trade in volume. This is very impressive. On a monthly basis, if we take into account a contraction of activity by the order of 20% for 1 month, as it was observed in the Chinese case, it means that for every month of high uncertainty of lasting transmission of the crisis, we lose $317 billion per month in terms of trade. In total, if we expect a full month of 20% contraction of domestic activity across the world with a progressive stabilization, we would lose $772 billion globally. So it means that there is, and this is the first nature of the crisis, a huge shock on global trade. In the following slide, we the first transformation of that crisis. We moved from a shock on supply chain, on trade, to a financial type of crisis. And this is the pass-through number 2. We say that the crisis has been transformed into a global financial crisis. As you know, global equity prices have sharply corrected, and we had also a significant depreciation of all currency compared with the dollar. This very strong appreciation of the dollar and the strong correction of equity prices and the huge volatility that we see in fixed income markets all correspond to what we call a huge tightening of global monetary and financial conditions. It simply says that in the coming weeks, it will be very difficult for companies and for government to finance their activity. So this is what we call a tightening of monetary and financial. The third step, the second transformation of this crisis is the fact that at one stage, government realized that they wouldn't be able to avoid a confinement strategy. Even if they wanted to postpone it, every time they realized that confinement is the only solution. And it corresponds most of the time to closure of frontier, an abrupt interruption of trade, and it also corresponds to strategies of social distancing. So these two aspects of an external and internal confinement is very the most brutal aspect of that crisis, and it continues to impair the normal functioning of supply chain, and to disregard Germany is very badly positioned in Europe, as reflected by the table that we show in the slide 6. But in terms of internal confinement, what we can see is that we will have a huge shock on domestic demand for a major developed economy, and so it won't be consequence on world growth. So on the slide 7, we present our global macro scenario. To estimate this scenario, we have done the assumption that we will experience a contraction of activity by the order of 20% during 1 month on domestic demand, with after that a progressive recovery. And so this is something which is similar to what we have seen in China. The most advanced indicator that we have on China show that we have been persistently below the normal level of activity at an order of minus 20%. This is the kind of shock that we have studied to anticipate what will be the correction for the developed economy. And the result of this is visible on the left. You can see that we will have a significant contraction of activity at a world level in the second quarter of 2020, which will be followed by a recovery thereafter. This is why we call our scenario a seclusion recession followed by a U-shaped recovery. We still expect, we are confident in the fact that we will have a recovery in the second half of 2020. All in all, world GDP growth is expected to decelerate from 2.5% to 0.8% in 2020. You can see that for Eurozone member, we have a significant contraction of activity in 2020 from 1.2 to minus 1.8, and for the Eurozone as a whole, for Germany from 0.6 to minus 1.8, for France from 1.3 to minus 1.3. For the US, we have a significant deceleration from 2.3 to plus 0.5, even if we think that in the first half of 2020, the US will even experience a situation of technical recession, 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. After this huge shock and this transformation in the nature of the crisis, there were a swift reaction of central banks and governments. This is presented in the slide 8. And we can see that ECB, Fed, and the PBOC have been very rapid in injecting a huge amount of liquidity and reinitiating securities purchase program at the level of 120 billion for the ECB, at the level of 700 billion for the Fed. The Fed having injected more than 1 trillion of supplementary liquidity, and the PBOC, which from the start of the crisis has launched a multiplicity of initiatives to provide liquidity and to provide short-term and medium-term funding facilities to companies. Companies, the word is very important, and this is something that the government have understood. They have specifically designed their fiscal policy to help companies because they want to maintain the normal functioning of the economy. And I would say that this is somewhat reassuring that the government have this knowledge, this experience from the subprime crisis, meaning that they will do their possible to avoid huge destruction amongst companies. So that's why the stimulus of major developed economy are specifically designed for companies, with in particular credit guarantee provided by the KfW in Germany with a level of 550 billion euro, 300 billion euro for France. In the US, we have the announcement of fiscal stimulus representing more than 1 trillion. So in terms of size globally, both at the monetary and on the fiscal side, this is huge. And this is, for me, well targeted. That's why, I repeat, we are confident in this U-shape recovery. Of course, the short-term contraction of activity in the first half of 2020, for most of the developed market, we will have a situation of technical recession. Of course, this huge shock will have a very important impact on the labor markets. We estimated in a situation where we have this scenario of contraction by minus 20% of the normal level of activity for 1 month, that more than 65 million of people in Europe would need some form of job support. And so we have estimated that this cost would represent 140 billion for the overall European government, representing 0.9% of GDP. So again, I guess that the design of a European fiscal policy trying to provide some assistance via form of assistance such as Kurzarbeit in Germany, which has demonstrated its efficacy in previous crises. I think that that kind of initiative at European level is more than welcome and will show its efficacy again. 10, we are looking at the potential number amongst SME, potential number of companies which are at risk, and so according to our calculation, more than 3,000 companies with an average turnover of 40 million are at risk. And to this regard, the countries being the most exposed to a significant wave of destruction or disruption in this segment of companies, the countries the most exposed are France, Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, Germany, and Italy. So what does it mean for global insolvency? After, again, I repeat, integrating this scenario of a contraction by the order of 20% below the normal level of activity for 1 month, and after that progressive recovery, we estimate that in terms of insolvency, it would create an increase of insolvencies by 14%. In the US, it will represent an increase by 7% in 2020, an increase by 15% in China, and an increase by 16% in Europe. This is a significant blow for the overall economy. Of course, everything what I'm presenting now is our central scenario, but there is also another scenario where we could see something going wrong. And this is actually what the market is currently pricing. When you look at the risk premium, which are visible at the level of the market, we can see that, for example, in terms of credit spread in the US, there are sectors such as oil and gas, automobile, or travel and leisure, which are, of course, the target of the market, meaning that they are associating a higher level of risk to that sector, which are the most exposed to the current shock. This is the same in Europe with the chart on the right. We can see that we see basic resource, automobile in part, and travel and leisure. But I would say that this is even more equally spread between the different sector on for Europe. So it means that again, this is not the end of the story. We need to closely monitor any significant accident in the credit market, because again, if a large company or a large financial institution experience a very strong difficulty, we could have another very bad. This is what we describe in the slide number 13, two scenarios, U-shape and protracted crisis. In the U-shape scenario, you will be able to find our central scenario, so meaning that we expect 0.8% of growth in globally for real GDP growth, for EMU minus 1.8, for the US plus 0.5. But again, if there is a significant accident, that we need to closely monitor this. If there is a significant accident implying a huge level of insolvencies, a huge credit event with a freezing of the money market and further correction of the market. So in that regard, we could easily enter into this protracted crisis type of scenario with a contraction of overall activity by minus 1.5%. For the EMU, it would mean a contraction of activity by minus 6%, and for the US by minus 3%. So again, we are confident in our U-shaped scenario. This is the central scenario, but we need to closely monitor the short-term evolution of the risk, because a situation of protracted crisis is, of course, still possible. One element, for example, which could justify this protracted crisis would be a second wave of contagion. Let's imagine that China managed to control the number of contagion inside the country, and that China experienced another wave, another increase of cases from the spread coming from other countries. So in that case, if there are several waves of contagion, in that case we would enter definitely into this kind of protracted crisis. In the US, what do we see? We see a significant contraction of activity in the second quarter of 2020, more than minus 14% Q-on-Q analyzed in the second quarter. All in all, we expect plus 0.5 in 2020. It means that, as usual, we will see a huge adjustment in the US job market. This is the most flexible aspect of this economy, and we estimate that we will lose 4 million jobs over the 6 coming months. So from a point where we are at 3.5% of unemployment rate, we could easily reach 6.5% at the horizon of January 2021. Of course, the US has, like I said before, reacted very rapidly. Injection of 700 billion of treasuries purchase, injection of 1.5 trillion of repo operation, plus multiplication of initiatives such as the commercial paper funding facility, and we anticipate that other facilities such as government-backed credit facility will take place. So this is a very powerful arsenal which is dealing with liquidity, because actually we can see element of stresses in terms of liquidity. So this is something that we need to closely monitor. On the fiscal side, there was a package of $1 trillion being announced by the White House. Of course, it still needs to be validated by the Congress. And so the fact is that this stimulus is well targeted for companies as well, and also we will provide a temporary assistance for households. We estimate that the multiplier of this fiscal package will be reasonable at 0.9, and Therefore, the contribution of this fiscal stimulus, if it is swiftly voted, will contribute to growth by 1.2 percentage points. And so it should help stabilize the level of activity in the US. In China, of course, the most important aspect of the shock has been experienced during the first quarter of 2020. We had a deceleration in Q1 we were before Q1 at 6% of growth, and we plunged to a level of 1.3% year-on-year. So this is a huge shock on the economy. For the whole economy, we expect at the reason of for the 2020 as a whole, a level of growth at 4%, and then a reacceleration at the reason of 2021 at 5.8%. Again, given the high degree of centralization of the sanitary policy, of the monetary and fiscal policy, we expect this stabilization policy to be somewhat efficient. So it should help the situation. We have on the slide 17 the description of the China policy mix. We expect a fiscal stimulus for 2020 of 4.4% of GDP against 2.7% initially. We expect further policy rate cut for the PBOC, further liquidity injection, further decline of reserve requirement ratio. The only aspect where we don't expect much initiative is the housing markets. And so at this level, let's say that the government will want to avoid to create another situation of bubble in the Chinese housing market. In the EU, on the slide 18, you can see the different size of stimulus for Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the UK. And this is very important, especially for Germany, which again during the weekend has announced the new fiscal initiative, and the impact on growth should be important. So it will be very helpful for the economy in the short term for the stabilization of growth in 2020. But of course, it will mean that we will see a significant increase of deficits across developed market and a significant increase of public debt. This is important because it will have long-lasting consequences as regards the weight, the influence of government in the total economy. This is at this level that we see that we are in a turning point. This crisis will probably mean a redefinition of the role of the state in the whole economy for major developed countries. In Germany, of course, we have an idea of the size of the shock that this economy will experience in the short term. The IFO survey index suggests that the German GDP contracted by 4% year-on-year in March. This is a huge blow. You can see that it suggests something close to the shock that we have experienced during the subprime crisis. Again, on the right, you have what we expect for Q3 and Q4. This is a stabilization which will be triggered by the swift and well-targeted fiscal stimulus. But again, it won't be enough to avoid the situation of recession for 2020 as a whole. The German GDP growth will be in negative territory as the major other European economy in 2020. As regards the situation of France, you can see also the size of the shock for the second quarter of 2020. We have estimated that we have provided this scenario for a 1 month confinement scenario. But if this confinement would be prolonged by 1 more month, so we will be at minus 3.1% of growth in 2020 against what is today our baseline scenario, a contraction of activity in 2020 by minus 1.3%. On the French side, to have an estimate, a clue about the size of the shock, we have a look at manufacturing PMI subcomponent, and especially the inventory. We have built the inventories to new order ratio, and the size of the adjustment that we see at the level of this indicator is a huge blow, both at the level of supply and the level of demand. It means that for sure there is no doubt that we will be in negative territory for the French growth in 2020. I would highlight the fact one element of fragility for the French economy before the COVID-19 crisis, meaning the extremely high leverage of French company before this crisis. And it suggests that the recovery of the French economy could take a longer time compared to other economic partners, because we were in a more fragile situation when looking at the degree of leverage that before the crisis. Clearly, we had deviated from the long-term trend of accumulation of debt. The accumulation of debt was too rapid. Now we will have to pay this complacency in terms of leverage for company in the French economy. The situation of Italy, which is the type of economy which is also export-driven, such as Germany or other Nordic economies. So it means that the impact via the trade channel will be very important. But another element related to Italy is the situation of the banking sector. There is a common destiny between public finance, the state of the level of public debt, and the situation in the banking sector, because the Italian government is heavily exposed to the stability or instability of the banking sector. And what we can see in the market is that there is a huge wave of distrust as regards the situation of banking institutions, especially in Italy. And there was clearly a kind of failed type of communication on the ECB side when Ms. Lagarde suggested that the situation of spread, especially from the periphery, were not central concern for the ECB. Clearly speaking, we cannot. A central banker has to keep the priority of maintaining the unity, and with that kind of word, it contributes to create instability and volatility. And so the banking sector, besides the industrial recession and the trade recession that we will see, the banking situation will have to be closely monitored on the Italian. In the UK, we expect a fall in private consumption by minus 1.5% on a Q-on-Q basis in Q2. This is 70% of the GDP. This is a huge blow. So that's why, again, the Bank of England and the government reacted very rapidly. There was the announcement of a fiscal stimulus of 30 billion. And this will contribute to stabilize growth. But again, we know that with the Brexit story, the British economy was severely impacted by a persistingly high level of uncertainty, and this second blow will plunge the UK economy in a situation of technical recession. Regarding the situation of emerging markets, I would like to highlight the fact that the second step of this current crisis is a significant tightening of monetary and financial condition. And this is very important. For example, many emerging economies or many emerging companies are indebted in dollars. So any phase of strong appreciation of the dollar means that it becomes more difficult for those economic actors to repay their debt. And so that's why we are looking at gross external financing requirements as percentage of foreign exchange reserve, or that's why we are looking also at foreign exchange denominated debt for non-financial company in emerging economies. And to this regard, Argentina, Turkey, Hungary, Ukraine, Chile and Poland are on a difficult situation. So in my view, this is the next step of the crisis. We will see much stronger difficulty in terms of financing of their activity and in terms of stability as a whole for emerging economies in the coming we have, for emerging Europe, produced a new economic scenario. We expect deceleration from 2.1 to 1.2 in 2020 for emerging Europe as a whole. What we can say is that this area was close to a situation of overheating before the COVID-19 crisis, and now clearly there will be a significant deceleration of activity. The problem is that in terms of monetary policy, there is not much leeway because interest rate, official rate, are already low in a context where inflation is very high. So the impulse coming from the monetary policy side is somewhat small. There is more leeway on the fiscal side, and that's why we expect public debt and deficit to increase and new initiative in terms of fiscal stabilization to be announced in the weeks. In Asia Pacific, we expect again a significant deceleration of activity from 4.2 to 2.9. This is the inverse compared with emerging Europe. Let's say that fiscal policy has also a certain amount of leeway. So Hong Kong, New Zealand, Thailand, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and China will be able to operate fiscal stimulus. But compared with emerging Europe, yeah, there are more leeway on the monetary side, even if it is not exceptional. But let's say that we are confident as a whole in Asia Pacific in the capacity of economic authority to operate stabilization and allow a rebound in the second half of 2020. Of course, the destiny of Asia Pacific is intimately intertwined with the destiny of developed markets, Western developed economies, and so it means that we will need to be patient on Asia Pacific side to really see a full stabilization of the economy, because most of these economies are export driven and so depend on the stability of Europe and the US. In Latin America, we expect the whole region to enter into a recession and to experience a contraction of activity by minus 0.9% due to the external shock in 2020. Central banks of Brazil, Chile have already operated rate cuts. We expect other central banks in the region to announce that kind of initiative. We know that the Achilles heel of this region is the situation of public debt. And so the utilization of the fiscal stabilization is likely to announce times of instability and high uncertainty for this. In the Middle East, of course, the blow on oil prices will be detrimental for the whole region. We expect the Middle East region to be in contraction territory in 2020 as a whole, at minus 0.2 compared to plus 1.4% in 2000, compared to 1.4% in our previous scenario. Given the peg arrangements that characterize a certain number of that country, we identify Oman and Bahrain as being weaker than the rest of the group. And so we need to closely monitor the situation in those countries. And I would say that for all the economies which are, of course, oil export driven, the current context is a huge challenge and will create a very high number of difficulties. In Africa, we expect some countries to also undergo the full impact of the external shock, and we put the highlight on South Africa, Congo, Algeria, Angola, and Nigeria. And some countries are more exposed than others to a possible liquidity shock. You remember we said that in the context of significant tightening of monetary and financial conditions, those countries which have some debts denominated in dollar are more exposed than others. If they have a very high level of external debt, this is an element of fundamental weakness. At this level, Angola, Gabon, Congo, and Ghana are expected to be at the center of. So this is what we expect for all the region. This is our central scenario, but again, I would want to highlight the fact that we have an alternative scenario, a protracted crisis, and so we ask on the slide, on the following slide, what could go wrong. And we have a certain number of canaries in the coal mine being visible. So at the level of the credit market, this is the chart on the left, we are studying the possibility of a large re-rating risk process. We know that there are a number of BBB companies which are really at the frontier with which are very close to a situation of being targeted by the market. And so this is something that we need to closely monitor. This proximity of triple B segment with a junk debt, meaning that if there is a huge institution of the triple B segment which is defaulting, so another wave of companies could suddenly be rated as being in junk status. So this re-rating risk is something which could contribute to a freezing of the credit market and have a very important and detrimental impact on the whole economy of developed economies. The second aspect, the second chart, deals with liquidity crisis. We have some signals showing that liquidity is at risk in developed economies, and especially in the US. This is something that we need to closely monitor. And the third element of the possible protracted crisis is a policy mistake. For example, we can consider that the communication of the ECB when with the story of the spread of the periphery is something that which is a mistake and contribute to increase instability. So it will be very important to not repeat that kind of mistake. So we approach the end of the presentation. As an element of conclusion, we can consider the medium-term aspect, the long-term aspect of this crisis. The first element, strong state. It means that we expect the weight of government to be much stronger in the future. A blow to globalization. We were already in a phase of deglobalization, and of course, this crisis will accentuate this trend. We will see with the section goodbye risk-taking, more risk-adverse type of attitude in the market and in the real economy, with an expected increase, significant increase in the saving rate of households. Chinese soft power, maybe that the winner of this crisis after the full stabilization will be China, because China shows with its central type of organization its capacity to stabilize the situation and also provide help to develop markets. Rising risk awareness. This is something that I would classify in relation with environment protection policy, meaning that if we have that type of crisis, this is also related to the fact that the destruction of ecosystem increase the likelihood of seeing repeated type of sanitary crisis. Increase in productivity. This is one of the positive aspects over the medium term. It shows that we need to be flexible and to adapt to exceptional circumstances. So we expect more flexible team structure, remote working, and less business trip. So this is something which will boost the level of productivity. Those are the medium-term consequence of that type of crisis. I thank you very much for your attention. We stay at your disposal should you require more information on our scenario. Thank you very much.
The coronavirus sanitary crisis is not a Chinese supply chain issue anymore. With new sanitary measures taken all across Europe and in the USA, most companies will experience a temporary but strong decrease of turnover or production capacity or both. While governments are taking strong measures that will certainly amortize the economic shock, there is no doubt that the situation will affect the weakest companies, the ones which were already fragile before the current crisis. Some specific sectors and activities will experience a very severe drop of cash inflow, and for some of them the effect will be longer lasting than the current lockdown. Beyond the economic shock, the effect of which will last the first part of the year, we are currently expecting a U-shaped recovery on the second half. Hence, a part of the lost activity will be compensated. However, certainly not all of it will, and certainly not as rapidly as we expected even a few days back. While this is a strong shock, as EH, we do not see it as strong as the 2008-2009 credit crunch, in particular thanks to significant actions taken by governments worldwide to cushion the economic effect of the sanitary crisis. However, given the worsening of the situation and expected lasting effects, Euler Hermes cannot maintain all of its current cover which was granted during and taking into account a much more benign economic environment. So, obviously, we are taking and we will be taking measures to adjust our cover. These measures will be targeted. We are busy reviewing the situation of all buyers one by one, and you can imagine the daunting task it is, in order to assess who has a high probability to withhold the storm and who has a lower probability. We will then adjust our credit limits to amounts that can be confidently granted with the current premium rates. Again, we assess that the situation is not the same as the one we experienced during the previous financial crisis, and we do not believe at this stage that so-called mass measures will be necessary, except for a few local markets where we extended many small limits to fragile buyers during better times. Therefore, we still intend to look at each company on its merit to assess the correct amount that can be granted under our policies. So clearly, I won't promise you that we will do nothing. The situation is such that we obviously have to adjust, like every company out there. However, given as you know that we have already started last year to adjust our portfolio to a potential 2020 downturn, I can promise you that the pace and the intensity of our actions will be measured with the greatest attention to minimize impact on our common customers. One last word on large buyers. In the current situation, we simply can't rely on the past to assess some large buyers, even with outstanding reputation. We expect large household names to be hurt very badly, to the point of not being able to honor their commitments to suppliers. We currently provide very large coverage on such names, while financial market access to liquidity resources or credit have strongly reduced or disappeared altogether, as illustrated by the price of CDS and corporate spreads on these names. We will not be able to stand such coverage, not more than the financial markets. So you have to expect a downward adjustment of our limits on several very large companies. This is unfortunately the nature of the current situation. Lastly, as part of human nature, we know that there will be errors and miscommunication. We apologize in advance for them. However, we commit to stay available and open to any comment you will want to make. Thank you for your attention. I now hand over to Véronique.
Thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Loes, for your insight into the current situation and what that means in terms of both macroeconomic impact and risk appetite. Before we finish this webinar, I would like to make a few closing remarks from a commercial perspective. Firstly, I want to clarify Euler Hermes' position in respect of coverage for insured perils that may arise following this new crisis. Based on our knowledge at the current time, we do not consider COVID-19 to be a natural disaster or force majeure event, and will apply the conditionality of each policy in that regard. All claims will be assessed on their merits of the contract and financial situation and perspective at that time. Secondly, given this exceptional situation, we are launching specific support in all our regions aimed at introducing flexibility in policy management, like the claims declaration period extension or the postponed state of default. We also want to support companies' cash flow with special attention to SMEs, which are more vulnerable to the swift drop of activity we are experiencing in these days. Lastly, as the situation evolves, we will continue to work closely together with you and provide you with as much information as possible. Likewise, and we will not say it enough, we invite you to reach out to your usual contact for any question you may have. This crisis is unprecedented in every way, and so it raises questions that fall out of usual concerns. All our team are really available to listen, to answer quickly, and as best as possible. Rest assured that Euler Hermes remains, now more than ever, steadfast in our commitment to help businesses trade with confidence in tomorrow. Despite the growing pandemic, we make sure to keep focus on navigating through it and ensuring recovery. Please take care and talk to you later.